You're listening to The Walking Dead Underground. Now your hosts, Cinik, Igrihe, and Ryan.
You are listening to the Walking Dead Underground podcast, and I'm your nine-fingered host, Cinik. And joining me, as always, the best bagmen in the business, Igrihe and Ryan. And on this week's show, well, we do a full breakdown on what possibly could be in Gregory's record collection and why somebody would want to listen to it. We also review the action-packed Season 8, Episode 12, entitled The Key, because we are the Walking Dead Underground podcast, and we're just as befuddled at where the hell Judith came from as you are. We opened the episode with some slow piano music and creepy savior close-up montage. Welcome home, Dwighty boy. Ryan, a heartfelt Dwight and Negan reunion, or maybe not so much. Did you feel that Negan wasn't buying it, possibly eyeballing Dwight, maybe measuring every single word that came out of his mouth?
Yeah, I think so. I don't think Negan has trusted Dwight for a long time, and then he kind of happens to disappear under strange circumstances. So I think Negan's not 100% sure that Dwight has switched sides, but I think he knows something's off, and he's doing what he does to kind of feel him out and figure him out. It seems like one of his strong suits is kind of reading people and, reading kind of subtle cues. And I think that's what Negan's doing at that point.
Well, it's kind of an odd thing too, right? Because how do you ever expect to gain loyalty or keep loyalty from people that you have abused so badly? I mean, you've scarred this guy for life. And I'm not even just talking about sleeping with his wife, but you scarred this guy for life with an iron. I mean, how do you expect him to ever be truly loyal?
You can't expect him to be loyal. Like there's absolutely no way, because I think they happened in that order where first he took his wife and then he gave him the iron. Like the first alone would be enough to drop anybody's loyalty away from you. But then to burn somebody's face for just not agreeing or doing something you didn't like, that's a little too far to get anyone to ever be completely loyal to you.
You really have to have a good song and dance or some really strong presence, because I just got done watching the whole Waco 6-part miniseries on Paramount. Very good. If you haven't seen it, I suggest go take a look at it. But when we get to the point in the conversation where I sell you the goods, I sell you what you should believe, I tell you how you should live your life, and then we get to that moment where I say, oh, and by the way, I'm now going to be sleeping with your wife. How do you sell that to anybody, IG? How do you go to them and say, oh, I'm going to lay with your woman because this is what's best for everybody?
Well, like in the case of the Waco thing, it's kind of like Waco, Jim Jones, any type of those cults, basically. They've got them all somehow like convinced that they are something special, and then it might work. But it seems like here with the saviors that they're doing it basically pure out of fear of Negan. Like they allow these things to happen because they're afraid of that one man. And I guess, there have been some historical precedents for those kind of things happening where a small group or singular people can take over a large amount of people based on fear. And I don't personally understand it because that's not in my mentality to do, but I know that there's been precedent for it. And I just can't believe that that's the best way to build like brand loyalty, as it were, or trust, in I am Negan and we're all Negan. Well, you all can't be Negan because all of you aren't sleeping with these 12 women, right? Only Negan is doing that.
Well, also, if you consider, he's obviously he displays a lot of the characteristics of a cult leader. And you add on top of that, most of these cults are kind of dealing with, an upcoming apocalypse, but this is literally a post-apocalyptic scenario in which people need a leader. So, this is really a situation where I think there's a deep need to have some kind of a leader that will guide them out of the chaos. And so I think, that's another layer on top of it, is that you have Negan, who is already this kind of charismatic cult-like leader who is actually in a situation where the people want to believe him. I mean, for a lot of people, I think they'd be willing to trade that for the safety, or relative safety that is a sanctuary. So I think that, while I personally wouldn't be able to do that, I can see how people give in and, just allow things to go, because they need something and they need somebody to allow them to feel safe.
Well, considering ID how his wife left, I mean, Dwight's still holding on to those wedding rings. Is the sentimentality worth the other side of your face being burnt with the iron? I mean, what do you think Negan would do if he found out?
Oh, well, I'm not sure it would be just an iron. I think, he'd get the way of the last doctor that they had and get put all the way into the burner. He wouldn't be allowed to live, I think, if Negan knew that he kind of basically let her go or that he'd been colluding with Rick and gang. All of those things would get him a pretty quick and public death, but he's hiding it drastically well considering what's at stake. I mean, I guess maybe he understands that he's done enough wrong that he's willing to die if he needs to further the loss of the saviors, I guess, or at least getting closer to a peace agreement, an effective peace agreement, not one where basically the saviors are just there as takers and not contributing, because that's really what they've been. Now they do contribute in a way of safety, I guess. Well, that was what they were supposed to be doing, but it wasn't especially effective, and they weren't even able to keep themselves safe from Rick's group that was really kind of a hodgepodge of all kinds of different people, none of which were super effective fighters, save for like Michonne and Daryl and things like that.
Well, if they hadn't used the title already, the perfect title for this episode would have been Guts. They really pulled this straight out of the comic book. Ryan, at times you've been unapologetically Negan, but where are you at with the use of the tainted weapons, and are you surprised that no bad guy has used this sooner?
Yeah, that's funny. When I was watching, my wife, who's on her last legs with The Walking Dead at this point, was saying, like, why hasn't anyone done that before? What's going on? I think, it's, I'm not, it's hard to say I'm either side, but I see Negan as a leader and where he's coming from, because I don't agree with all of his tactics. But I think if you're in a situation here, if you're Negan and you want to win and you don't want to completely decimate everyone that's left, I think it makes sense that you need to put the fear of God into them and, make them realize that you'll stop at nothing to get your way. So, as a tactic, it makes sense. I don't know that it's the morally right thing to do, but who knows what the morally right thing to do at this point in the world as it is.
Oh, I think that's the point. Aren't they past morals at this point? They're trying to gain compliance by any means necessary. And I think like using tainted weapons to scare the hell out of them into compliance is what they're attempting to do. I just think that, obviously moral has gone out the window a long time ago in Negan's mind as far as a lot of these things go. He's at this point is grasping at straws to try and gain a victory. Like closed, all done, there is no more fighting victory. And he needs to go this far to get it.
He has a strange code, because he does, you wonder, I think he does believe that he is a savior. And I think but he also believes that there are rules and that he does rule by fear, and he needs people to fear him. But I actually do think that somewhere in his mind, he actually thinks he's doing the right thing. So I think in a way, morals do exist, but they shift. And I think just throughout life and history and the world, as technology evolves, I think our morality evolves. And just in this situation, I think as our technology devolves, the morality has to shift as well. And I think that, again, from a certain point of view, you can understand why Negan's doing what he's doing and the philosophy behind it. Right or wrong, I do think morals exist. It's just a really strange way of kind of expressing that.
Negan is super frothed up and proud of himself about this whole tainted weapons plan, and so is Simon, IG, until Negan turns his back and then the smile quickly fades. Are they foreshadowing maybe that the love affair between these two is really on the rocks?
Oh, I think it's been on the rocks for some time. I mean, a couple episodes ago when he wanted to fight about what to do with the junkyard kids, it was on its rocks then. And I think it's been on the rocks for some time, because every time Simon tries to say, well, let's look at it this way, Negan shuts him down and shuts him down hard. And I think, being the strong character that Simon is, he's getting real tired of it. And I can understand that, if you actually have input and good ways to go about things. And no matter what you say or what kind of input you try and put in, they're not even willing to listen and see if you've got a way to make things happen. You're going to get real tired of that shit real quick. So like the problem is in a post-apocalyptic scenario, you could really end up hurting yourself very badly, because if you can't keep the trust of your lieutenants, you're really going to be ready to see a little bit of a Caesar moment, A2 Brutus.
Ryan, do you think it's a case where Simon has outgrown Negan? Maybe he's possibly even a few IQ points smarter than the leader?
I think it's more Simon growing, kind of a growing discontent in him, and that I think he realizes that, as anyone realizes, Negan's strength is only in how much he can get people to fear him, but he's only that strong. He's only human. And so I think Simon maybe is starting to realize that they don't need Negan, and Negan, and he's coming to he's at odds with Negan's ways of ideas. And the fact that, because Negan in a weird way has his strange morality, he sees it as Negan allowing all of this to happen and allowing people to die and allowing, the saviors to really be decimated to, in their own right and to a large extent. So I think that Simon's starting to realize that maybe Negan has outgrown his use, and that, again, things need to move past that. And they need, as a society, may need to evolve past Negan. So I think Simon's realizing that, and maybe now he's being opportunistic and realizing, it's just interesting, because I wonder how much of it is self-interest and how much of it is genuinely he thinks that maybe Negan's not the right person for this right now. Like how much of it is like, Simon seeing maybe an opening for him to be the leader, versus just how much of it is, Negan, you're screwing things up. We're all going to die. You need to go.
IG, if you're picking a number 2, you're the guy in charge and you want somebody to carry out your tasks, what's the number 1 characteristic that you're looking for?
Trust. Trust is number 1. And the thing is the trust has to go both directions. I want that guy to trust me, but I have to trust that he knows what's best sometimes without me standing over him, telling him exactly what to do. If I want a number 2, I don't want to have to manage everything all the time. I want somebody else that can jump in and take load off of my plate. And that's as true here as it is anywhere else. You need other people that can function and thrive without you having to hold their hands. And Simon could have been somebody like that, because Simon is smart. He's charismatic. He's got people that'll listen to him. But he doesn't trust him. He doesn't trust him implicitly. He doesn't give the trust like he needs to. And I mean, it's shown over and over again whenever like he tries to speak up and he whacks Lucille on the table and tells him basically shut the hell up and listen to me. I don't get that, because why are you going to have leadership if you're not going to empower leadership to do the things they need to do?
Well, you never want somebody to think that they can do what you're doing better than you can do, because why do they need you at that point? So I understand throwing the reins around Simon and every once in a while pulling him back so you can establish control. But at the same time,
but he's gone too far.
Yeah, absolutely. He's kind of pushed this strong personality into a corner and marginalized him and said, your opinions don't matter. And people won't put up with that for very long if you continue to do that. Ryan, Dwight does everything he can not to ride with Simon, but ultimately he caves and ends up in the truck. Do you think this is a case of not wanting to be alone with the very perceptive Taskmaster, or do you think he was trying to get out to warn Rick and his people?
I read it more as him not wanting to slip up around Simon. And I think I see it as him thinking that Simon is perceptive and maybe Simon knows more than he's letting on, and that if he spends that bit of time with him, he's going to slip. So that's kind of how I read it. I think, I don't think he's in a rush. He wasn't in a rush to go back to the Saviors. I don't think, I think he knows he can find a way out when he needs to. So I don't see him as being in a rush to get out. But yeah, I think it's more he's going to try to save his own ass. I still, I think that Dwight means well, but I still don't buy completely that he's everything is completely altruistic and he's not out, to some extent save himself or maybe find his wife.
Well, I don't know as if he's looking for his wife. I think that maybe it's not altruism, but I think that he is tired of the Savior's bullshit. Just that simple. And he sees that the other side isn't full of that bullshit. You can be valuable on the other side just by being you. You don't have to bring some special task. You don't have to toe the fucking line. You can just be you. And if all you can do is rake fucking rocks together in a nice pattern, then we're going to let you rake the rocks till you can rake no more rocks. Whatever it is, they're going to let you do it on that side. And they're going to use you any way they can at the sanctuary. And I think Dwight, having lost his wife, having had the iron to his face, has had enough of this shit. And so I think he was absolutely trying to get on the bike, run ahead. No, I'm going to go scout. No, he's going to go let people know this shit is happening. Let's mount your offensive right now because Negan's coming out with him.
Well, and it kind of reminds me of the situation with Kilgore in Black Panther, right? You'd rather die in your own terms than be in bondage. And that's what Dwight has chosen. This alliance with Negan that he's chosen is costing him everything. It's costing him his appearance. It's costing him his wife. It's made him question who he was. Even in the letter that Sherry left him ages ago now, he's not the same person he was when this started. So it's almost like, what are you doing this for at this point? And revenge would be the only reason that would keep me coming back. We see Negan talking to Lucille, "Baby, you're beautiful," as she's soaking in a bucket full of tainted guts. Would you be able to put your full support behind a guy who's intimately involved with an inanimate object?
I wonder how many people have seen him like talk to the fucking bat, right? That might, damage your power a little bit. That it is weird every time I see it, and I think that they need to address that. Like, that could be an episode, like we've talked previously about getting a Negan backstory and how important and how much we would enjoy that. And I think along with the backstory had to be Lucille herself, the bat, like why the bat is important, why that bat with the barbed wire wrapped around it, and why he has such an emotional attachment, because he very well does have a serious emotional attachment. I didn't see any holes in the bat, so I don't know how emotional, but pretty emotional.
Oh my God, the bat pulled you off? Ryan, we talked about your love of hamburgers post-fight and all things involving Ryan George, but have you ever looked at anything as lovingly as Negan looks at that bat?
I don't know. I'd like to think I look at my wife as lovingly, but no, it's a little odd. And I think I'd like some kind of backstory because it is strange that, the way, it's one thing to kind of jokingly talk to it. But it's like, there's clearly, I mean, I don't know if we haven't gotten there yet, but, when it falls, when he's fighting Rick and when Rick has it, there's a clear anger and kind of vitriol in his voice that was just, it was as if he had grabbed his wife. So there's something there that is really odd. And I'd like to know what it is. And yeah, so it's really strange.
Well, on a personal note, Rick shows Saunders into Hilltop, and Rick gives that sideways glance at the holding pen with all the Savior prisoners over there, which worries me a little bit because about 5 of my Facebook friends are captive. That's not good for the people on my Facebook list. But IG, what is more certain death? Not feeding the prisoners for a few days or having them come in contact with the angel of death, which is Judith Grimes?
Ooh, yeah, because anybody gets around Judith is about to die. And it just keeps happening. And like they had another person, another no-named, she may as well have been wearing a red shirt with a Starfleet logo on it, walking out carrying Judith, because she's going to be next. The next no-name person to get killed that held Judith at some point. It's like he really takes this whole it takes a village thing a little too seriously, because why is it that Judith can be with everyone? It's like, this is all of your child. No, it's only, Rick's kind of, but not really. It's more Shane's child, but we'll get on that some other time. I think the problem is that, I think Judith at this point, like, has Rick really confused. And I think at some point she's going to pull some like scanners like move and point at the Saviors and scream weird. And he's going to go over there and start shooting them, because that's how weird shit has gotten lately. So I'm just waiting. I hope it doesn't turn to that. I hope they only have a few episodes left of the season. They got to do something. They really got to do something.
Not Dwight goes and tells Rick, there are a million ways to say I'm sorry, but only one way to say I was wrong for choking the shit out of you and then ruining your master plan by being impatient. Ryan, he did smuggle the refugees from the safe zone to Hilltop, but he's also the reason why the Saviors are out and alive. How much of this is on Daryl?
Hindsight 2020, it's easy to say a lot of it's on Daryl. The blame goes around. I think no one person can be blamed for it, and no one person is kind of innocent of any of it. I think they've all
No. Ryan, there was a plan. They had all developed a plan. The only one that started this whole revolution against the plan was Daryl. So what do you mean there can be no blame? The plan was fucking working.
Regarding and Rick calls an audible to go out was going to the garbage people part of the plan too. I mean, there was like they all called their own audibles, so it's not and I mean beyond this, it's like there's so much stuff. I mean, to that point, people have screwed up, and Rick is messed up time and time again. So yes, obviously we can blame Daryl for this, going wrong, but
that's the one we're talking about. Is this one?
Yeah, so then yes, okay, we can blame Daryl. He can accept the blame, but I think that people have messed up enough throughout that you can't just toss them under the bus, and you just have to let bygones be bygones and figure it out from there.
Well, IG, at one point, Rick referred to Daryl as a brother. Now that trust seems to be gone. I mean, can the rift be repaired? At one point, Rick says, I'm going out, and Daryl says, I'll go with you. And he's like, no, we should split up. Was that him not wanting to be around?
Yeah, I think he didn't want to be around him right now, but I think the fact that he's not lashing out at him and everything else, the rift can be repaired. The rift will be repaired. But, it's just like anytime you have a fight with somebody you're close with, sometimes you need a day or two. And they haven't had a day or two because, they're living in the apocalypse. So that's the problem, is you still got to trust each other. You still got to do the thing. And that's the one thing they do better on this side, is they do trust each other. The problem is sometimes you trust someone to make a good decision, and then they let all the bad guys back out because they thought they had a better plan, even though you told them to wait, which is what happened, Ryan, if you don't remember.
I mean, if you're Rick, Ryan, do you trust Daryl at this point? I mean, can you leave him in charge of shit while you rush off and bash your car into somebody else's?
Yes, I think he's done enough over the years that he has to trust him. He has no choice. I mean, who can he really trust at this point? So yeah, he's got to trust him. He has to hope that Daryl realized the error that he made and that he won't do it again, because Daryl's easily one of the most capable people there. So if he doesn't trust him, he's really, who can he trust? Michonne?
Even her, as of late, has had a hard time listening to Rick. She kind of just goes off and does whatever she wants anyway. She'll Rick will understand at some point.
But actually, that to me is actually kind of good writing, because Rick has made so many bad decisions that why not go against what he wants? Over the years, he's made bad decision after bad decision. He's shown he's made this, he's shown insane, his hubris is never changes. So why not? So, in some ways I understand why people don't stand by his decisions.
I look at this as all the Carl effect, right? Because Carl couldn't stay in the fucking house, and neither are the rest of them. They're all going to get up and go do what they want when they feel like it. And so they all learned from Carl, because he started that mess of there's a plan, but look, I'm going to go over here and do my thing. So yeah, I mean, even Daryl, that's all, it's Carl's fault. And, I'm not going to say it truthfully, but haha, good thing he's dead, because maybe that'll slow down now. I'm kidding, by the way, completely.
And to follow that up, hashtag Ryan is a savior. We've thrown a lot at Rick, the widow, and the king, and they just keep coming. They just keep fighting. Tallying it all up, I keep getting the same answer. They don't scare. IG, is Simon right at this point? They're beating a dead horse with a tainted, blood-covered club, trying to scare the allies?
Yeah, and that's the thing, is I think every other group that they've beaten into submission, that's where they got them, was fear. And they initially had this group with fear, and then they pushed too hard. Right? It's kind of like that whole old thing where people talk about backing a badger into a corner. You can have it scared, but you're going to get it so far back and it's going to start coming back out. And that's exactly what's happening, is they push too fucking hard. If you push that hard, they're going to get tired of it. They're going to come back out, and they're not going back in that corner now that they're out. They're going to fight until they can't fight anymore. And that's the problem is, you can scare them again, sure, but it's not going to last. It's going to be a momentary scare that you can shock. And if you have a really good plan, maybe you could take advantage of that momentary shock. But the likelihood that you're ever going to gain control over them again is next to zero.
The Hilltop leadership receives a note that if they provide records, they will receive the key to the future. Ryan, first impression, trap or opportunity?
I think long term it's a trap. I just think that nothing can ever go well, and there always needs to be tension and some kind of a problem. So I think that long term it's a trap, but I think she is actually offering them real information and real potential opportunity. I just think that, nothing's free. And, even though they technically paid for this, I think, we'll find down the road that it's going to be a lot costlier than they expected. And so, I see her as being a problem down the road.
Well, now, if they can take the things that are in that book and actually produce those items and start actually milling corn and doing better at crops and having aqueducts and things like that, if they can make those things happen out of that book, what does their yield go to? How much can they produce now that they've got? It may be old technology, but it's technology the world lived off of for thousands of years. If they can produce that, they can all of a sudden start basically feeding the entire region from one area. And that's the thing, is how much can they do with that? So yeah, it might be self-serving to give them that, but maybe she doesn't have the manpower to actually put it together, where the Hilltop and the people that are there do have the simple manpower to build windmills and to build aqueducts, and then you can actually start humanity over again. So I think that you have to be wary and watch for the trap, but it might not be as dirty minded as we think it is.
I do question that. Like, yes, the Hilltop has manpower, but how much manpower do they really have to build, to build what they would really need to build to get that society? I feel like we need the resources and manpower that are, far outpace what they currently have. So I'm a little, I'm interested in how, if it's just a kind of a writing decision that, we kind of look past, or if there's some real way that they, it'll be interesting to see where they go with it. Like, how much can they really build with the people that they have? Because, like, how do you build an aqueduct with even a few hundred people, and no resources? That'll be interesting to see how they make that work.
But maybe that's not where you start. Obviously, you start with a simpler thing, and when that starts paying dividends, you move up to the next thing. I mean, it's how we've progressed as a species. Our whole existence is the small thing, starting with the wheel and fire, and then pretty soon you're moving up to the next stuff. So I think that there could be some very serious possibilities, considering there's no real sustainable sources of technology going on. Yeah, they've got radios, but guess what? Pretty soon you're going to run out of gas to run generators. I mean, everything is on a finite line right now, and this extends that line, and that's what I'm seeing as a positive. So that this person might recognize that there's ability somewhere else to get that, and if that can happen, then her food for the rest of time can be taken care of. And I'm still afraid of the trap a little bit, but that's because that's this show. But I think it can be a good thing.
No, I agree. I think in the greater scheme of things, that would be the goal, is that you have to rebuild society, and you'd have to rebuild it, in the image of kind of more medieval times. I think mine is purely kind of nitpicky in that, like, I totally agree that that's how you start rebuilding a society. But realistically, that would take decades, centuries, where by season 8 or 9, or wait, what are we? Season 9, season 10, we're probably going to have fully functioning windmills and aqueducts and stuff that just is unrealistic to do in that amount of time. So that was my only just annoying nitpick, is probably the time that it will take for them to get these things done, considering the resources. But I absolutely agree that that would be the step once you're past the apocalypse, is how do we rebuild society?
Well, we did take that Rosita from absolutely worthless to master bomb expert in the same fucking show.
Fair enough, you're right.
She read the handout. But my thing is that we're forgetting the overall theme of this show, and is the better you're doing, the bigger the bad guy you seem to bring out to oppose you. So if they do start to rebuild and get crops and windmills, who's going to come and want to take that then? I mean, you're almost inviting trouble. The better you're doing, the more people are going to want to come and take what's yours. It could backfire on them that way as well.
Hey, and if they need the manpower and stuff to make this happen, should they move north to Pennsylvania and grab some Amish? They're probably still alive. Nobody was around them. Bring them down. We can build some shit, right?
Well, they do have Jerry. But my question is what records were actually at Hilltop? Because you figure they have to come from Gregory's own collection. And he just strikes me as a Jimmy Buffett fan. What records could they have possibly taken out of there?
Oh, well, he had the Thriller album. You got to have the Thriller album. I mean, he's probably got, Yellow Submarine, maybe even the White Album. Every episode, every Jimmy Buffett record made, including the live albums, are there. Quite honestly, he probably has a whole lot of like weird jazz albums from bands nobody's ever heard of. Because that's a Gregory thing all through and through, like techno jazz or some weird shit. What do you think, Ryan? Any weird record you think is in that collection?
I'll leave it to you. That sounds like a good.
In a world full of headshots, Rick misses with an automatic weapon, his python, and even a hatchet. Negan falls through the floor, and then we cut back to Georgina and her magical mystery van. But she doesn't accept spoken words, so sorry about that, Henry Rollins. You're out of luck. Ryan, have we finally found Eugene a suitable mate? And could you please reasonably explain to me what the fuck is going on with her?
Georgie's interesting. Again, I like the character. I think she's just as an actress, she's very charismatic and weird. And I think that's one of the strengths of The Walking Dead is whenever they bring on new characters, they're unique and interesting characters. I think often the characters then become kind of defined by their weird quirks, and some are not fully developed. But I do like where it's going, and I think she kind of presents herself as honest and trusting, and so I like where it's going. I think this is an episode, and we'll talk more when we get into like kind of my final review and recap. But I think that this episode did a lot of things well that has been missing for a lot of the season. And I think introducing an interesting character at this point in the season, who seems really valuable and important, was a really strong move. And I like the character. I think it's I'm interested to see where they go with her moving forward.
Well, in an act of trust, Maggie takes them all hostage. We get some great banter between Rick and Negan. If you aren't the most stubborn prick I've ever crossed dicks with. IG, Negan states that things were fine before Rick and his merry band of assholes showed up. Is he right or is he wrong? Make a case.
I don't think he's right. Things were fine. No, I mean, they were kind of living there, and then like things were happening where they were getting like attacked at random. So no, things weren't fine. And part of that were saviors. So no, things weren't fine. And then they got a couple of their people killed, and they're like, we're going to take half of your shit. And then you're going to continue to go out and gather, and we're going to take half of that shit. And we're not going to leave you with any guns. So you have to go out and gather with a knife and hope that you can defend yourself. So no, things weren't fine. And then he made that deal where he's like, we'll lower that to 25%. And only stipulation is you have to come work for me. You're going to start as a janitor, and your people can live like 75% kings. Yeah. Well, that means 25% slaves, right? Because they're still going to be having to gather for the sanctuary, which again, like I've said in the past, they're takers. They're not contributors. They're not giving anything. So no, things weren't fine. They were living on a timeline. Their timeline was going to end because you can only take from people for so long before they have nothing left to give.
No, it's just, like Negan, it's weird. I think we, in this episode, really saw how vulnerable he is and how weak he is in certain ways. Like he's bought into his own worldview so much that it seems like he can't kind of see the forest from the trees. Like he doesn't seem to be able to see things from anybody else's perspective. So it's almost as if when he interacts with people, whether it's Simon or Rick, or anyone, in his mind, the world works the way he sees it and he thinks it works, and they also see the world that way, and it seems like he can't comprehend anyone not seeing it that way. And I think that was really clear in him talking to Nick, because any other rational person would be thinking, well, his son just died, we've destroyed his people, I've murdered people in front of him, he must hate me, of course he wants to kill me, why wouldn't he want to kill me? Like, I wouldn't even think to offer him a deal. But I think Negan legitimately thought he had a chance while offering Rick that deal. So it's really some interesting insight into Negan as a character, and makes me wonder, maybe he's not as strong a leader as I had initially thought he was.
Ryan, do you think he was bargaining for his life at that point? Do you think that he was like, "Oh, I'm at a bad spot here. Maybe I need to pull something out of my ass to try to get out of this"?
At that point, just shut up and try to find a way out. Why talk? Like if I'm in that situation, I'm going to be silent and just hope that I can find my way out. I'm not going to be yelling at Rick, allowing him to get closer to me, to find a way, find me and try to come. But I will say, I earlier said that Negan's human, and I actually retract that. I don't think Negan's human. He's a superhero because of the stuff that he has survived. He survived in this episode. It's unreal. Like that he was being shot at from almost point blank range. He survived not only a wreck with walker guts and sharp objects and didn't happen to get cut, and then he falls like 20 feet and is perfectly fine. So yeah, I've changed my thoughts. I actually think that Negan is the first superhero on The Walking Dead.
And to further that point, now he is a superhero, but the one power he does not possess is the power to shut the fuck up. So
that's his kryptonite.
His kryptonite is like if you say something to him, he's gonna talk. So the
true.
reason he's not quiet is he can't do it. Like his only weakness is gab. He does not need to be anywhere near the Blarney Stone. I know we just went past St. Patty's Day. He has the gift of gab, and he will be heard, whether it's smart or not to be talking at that moment.
But we can all agree that Rick actually won the war of words this time. I mean, he outed him, and Negan really didn't have much to say about the accusations of you're basically using everyone for your own means. You're not saving anybody. Negan really had nothing for that. How do you defend that? When you're sleeping with people's wives, you're killing people, taking their food. There is no defense for that, no matter what your world purview is. Rick outs Simon for his scavenger hunt 2 episodes ago. See what I did there? And lets Negan know, where are your friends? It looks like no one's coming for you. Has this lack of reaction from his loyal troops, IG, changed everything for Negan at this point?
Maybe, but I'm wondering how many people are going to find out that no one came to rescue him because Simon stopped them, because he obviously escaped, and he only has to get to one of that whole group of people that was there for him to hear the story. He already knows that Simon betrayed him at the junkyard. Now he's going to find out that Simon betrayed him there, where he could have had a whole cavalry full of people with messed up weapons covered in guts and guns and everything else coming to his rescue against only Rick, because Rick is some kind of weird Wild West cowboy. It's not going to go well for Simon is what I see, and I'm wondering what's going to happen, because I like Simon and I don't want him to leave the show. I think he's so charismatic and he's acted so well. Stephen Ogg is amazing in this show, and I would hate for him to leave.
Simon lays it all out for Dwight. He says basically it's time for the Saviors to move on. We've gone this way. We're going to have to go another way. Ryan, in your opinion, as a Savior enthusiast, are they better off with Dwyman in charge?
Oh, Dwyman.
God, probably not. I don't think Dwyman works as a duo at all. I think that one of them dies, probably Dwight, quickly. I think Negan was able to manage things well for a time, and I think he just came upon a situation where he came upon a group that wasn't going to give up, and then at that point you do have to kind of use force and probably lethal group destroying force if you want to maintain the world as you see fit. I don't think Simon is a strong enough leader. I think he's a little impulsive, and I don't think he will, I can see Negan continuing to grow the population and expand their reach. I don't know that Simon is capable of that, and I think Simon will end up, at some point the Saviors implode or there's infighting. Like, you need a special kind of person to have everybody be afraid of them and not try anything. And I don't think that Simon's the kind of leader that will inspire people and also inspire fear and loyalty and also stop anyone from trying to take his spot.
So is it the leather jacket or the bat? Which one does he need?
It's the quips. It's the quips, the leather jacket, and the bat. It's
the ascot. Enid and Maggie are ready to go full Savior and take all of Georgie's stuff. Michonne talks them down. Carl never gave up on who Rick wanted him to be. IG, times are getting tough, food's getting low. Is it realistic to stay on the righteous path in this situation and still survive?
I think at this point, yes, you can still stay on the righteous path and survive. There's still plenty of things that can be like found and sought after and scavenged. I'm surprised knowing what the South is like, because I have lived there for a time, that they haven't found a Sam's Club or a Walmart that is just stocked with stuff. It seems like for whatever reason, they only end up in little podunk towns that don't even have a stoplight, instead of like coming to just a little bit bigger town, because every one of those in the South has a fucking Walmart. All of them. So I don't know why they haven't found some huge stockpile of at least creamed corn or something where they could at least live for a while. But it's out there. And I think staying on this path lets them live with themselves later. And they have to believe in there's a later. Or what are they doing this for? If they don't believe that there's more to come and that society can come back, then what are they doing? There's no point in continuing if you're not going to come out of this better for it.
The fight is on, and Rick is taking some heavy chances. And at one point, Negan tells him, "You're a goddamn psychopath. You're going to kill us both." And Rick replies, "As long as it's you first." A flaming Lucille is used to try to knock down a wall and knock down a door, knock each other's heads off. Rick mostly gets the upper hand in this fight, and Negan flees. Ryan, at this point, do you think Rick would willingly trade his life for Negan's?
I think he's dealing with grief and loss, and just he's dealing with emotional distress. He's dealing with things that have been unresolved, going back years at this point. He really hasn't had much time to just rest and think. And so I think that he's in a position where it's one track mind. And I don't think he cares. I don't think he sees, we've even seen in his treatment of Judith that, she's not a priority to him at this point. And so I think that, I think he would gladly trade his life for Negan's, which in that case, why didn't he should have just tackled him and then they just, hang out on the floor until they got eaten by walkers. So maybe not, but I do think he would potentially trade.
Well, he might trade, but if he can come out without having to trade,
maybe, it's okay.
Right? So, he was trying to get it done without trading. He's just going to have Negan get killed, and he gets to still walk out.
Well, he's seen this show, and he knows that they'll pull nonsense. So he'll get bit, and then Negan will just climb underneath the dumpster and hide out till Enid throws him some water. Maggie accepts the deal, and George delivers hopes, a plan for sustainable life and a new future, and some much-needed food. IG, is it realistic and even possible that a do-gooder is just wandering around out there helping people?
I guess it's possible. There's weirder shit in society today. And, when you thin out the herd, I would think that there might still be at least a few good people around. We've seen some good people in the show, and normally what happens is they get killed pretty awfully, but it's possible. All things are possible in this show. I'm hoping really that it is something deeper than that, though, because it is just a little strange to just put this little glimmer of hope in the middle of here. That's not really what's made this show strong. It's the ability to succeed in the face of all of this horror that has made the show strong. And if they go away from that and just give them this hugely thick plot armor of being able to here's a way to restart society, and it turns out that it's all in good faith and everything is hunky-dory, I think that takes away from the show. I think that takes away from the excitement. I don't think that would be a good way to move. So yes, I think it's possible that somebody like that exists, but unless they kill her in some horrific way, I don't think it's good for the show.
Ryan, Jadis has Negan. The Saviors are headed to Hilltop with weapons come to bear, and we now have plans for windmills. Give me your thoughts on the episode and your rating.
So, as you remember, earlier in the day, I shared a meme that is pretty accurate about the show, which is basically saying that, to enjoy The Walking Dead, you watch season 1, and then for every other season, you watch the premiere, the mid-season finale, and the finale. And mostly that's kind of true. They're, unlike, some of our other favorite shows, The Walking Dead seems to put all their eggs in those 3 episodes most seasons. And so the rest of the seasons can feel really like a lot of filler. And, it can be good filler and interesting characters and interesting stuff, but nothing moves. And for especially the last few seasons, we know the beats. We kind of know where the season's heading and what to expect. And then it just makes it boring because, every episode kind of confirms that, yeah, we're just slowly inching towards that finale. And we know the finale is going to be where we get something. So what I liked about this episode, this is the first episode in I don't know how long, the first non-premiere or mid-season finale, this is the first one that really moved things in a direction that was unexpected. And all of a sudden, like, I don't know what to expect. And that's the first time I've said that about The Walking Dead in, years. It seems that, the trajectory was, saviors get to Hilltop and there's a big war and somebody wins. And I was just expecting us to trudge along until that in the last episode. But all of a sudden, we've got a brand new characters, giving them hope. We've got Simon and they're revolting, and you've got Dwight, who's also kind of, he's on Rick's side, and Negan's now with Jadis, and so we have all this crazy stuff going on, and I have no idea where this is going to go. Does Negan escape? What happens when he escapes? Does he confront Simon? Do they go to the Hilltop? Like, it's just, everything is up in the air. Like, where's Jadis taking Negan? And even in the episode, there were, I was unsure of what was going to happen between Negan and Rick, and there was tension, and I expected, again, that fight and I'm sure they'll fight again. I expected that at the end of the season. So there was a lot going on in this episode, and a lot of really good stuff. It was the first time, again, in a while that I really, really enjoyed the episode and thought that they moved things forward in a way that was just unexpected. So I'm going to give this episode an 8.5.
We must expunge them. We must redact them. They're a mistake that we must erase, and then we're moving on. With a few episodes left of the story, it's finally kicked into full gear. I love the showdown between Rick and Negan. I love seeing Rick get a win, even if it's not a clear-cut win. For me, it was a win for Rick's group all around. Georgie's group leaves me with a lot of questions. The unexplained appearance of Jadis, it puzzled me. It was slightly convenient. I wasn't crazy about it. But more importantly, Austin Emilio and Stephen Ogg, frankly, fucking owned this episode. And Stephen Ogg is the villain that we deserved from the very beginning. Not friendly, not nice, just a straight psychopath that we could all fear and all as community come together and hate, where it's not split, where I'm team this and I'm team that. We know Simon's a bad guy and he needs to be dealt with. I give the episode an 8, as much for the movement as for the content.
I really loved everything about this episode for the first time in a long time, and for the same reasons these past two guys just said. There was movement, there was intrigue, there was story, there was some of the best writing they've had in a long time. I loved, especially, and I've said it before, I'll say it again, all the writing, all the best writing in the show is somehow reserved for the bad guys. Like they run into the writing room and they call, dibs, that's mine. And then the next one runs in and goes, shotgun, I get the next best one. It's hilarious that we don't get this kind of writing, save for Maggie. Maggie gets great lines, but everybody else gets kind of whatever lines. That being said, there was great stuff in this episode. There was movement. There was new characters, and I liked it. I'm going to give it an 8 as well, and I'm really looking forward to the rest of the season now. I was starting to fall off, but this really kind of amped me back up. I was just glued to the television watching it. So yeah, an 8 from me. And that's going to do it for this episode of The Walking Dead Underground, where we went over episode 12 of season 8, The Key. Great episode all around. We're calling it an 8.25. Go and take a look at it yourself. In the meantime, go ahead and check us out. You can find us at CINIKRADIO.com. You can find us on Twitter at CINIKRADIO. You can look for us on Facebook at www.facebook.com/CINIKRADIO. You can also find us on Instagram at Cinik Radio, and you can join us on the Walking Dead Underground Facebook site. Just go to Facebook, search for the Walking Dead Underground. More than 40,000 members over there. The greatest memes and discussion you could possibly want about The Walking Dead. That's where you're going to get it. Also, please feel free to share this show with everybody you know. We love every listen we get, and we can't wait to bring you next week's show. I'm Igrihe. With me were Cinik and Ryan. We had a great time. Come back next week, hear about the next episode, and until next time, don't get captured.
Follow the podcast on Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, and at thewalkingdeadunderground.com. Join us in our fight against the saviors.